Welcome to the Women Inspire Aspire podcast. In this episode, I talk to Sonali Prasad about journalism and poetry.
Hi Sonali, thank you for accepting my invite to appear in the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Venkat. Thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here with you.
Wonderful. It's a pleasure to have you at the podcast. You are very accomplished. You have written a book. You are also a TED Fellow. So let's talk about all of those things. To start off the discussion, could you tell us a bit about your background, where you are from, what you do?
Yeah, I wish I could tell you a very linear story, but it's an interesting one. So I was born and raised in New Delhi, India, and my education until college has been in Delhi. And after that, I left to Singapore to do my bachelor's in computer science. I stayed there and studied there 7 years, 3 years of work. And then I went to Colombia to do my master's in journalism. My work has taken me across the globe for different assignments, whether it's Japan, Russia, Brazil, Korea. So I've been very lucky that I've gotten a very wide canvas to learn storytelling in and to learn from some of the best people in the world.
Wonderful. So basically your work is about journalism or storytelling?
I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. They, of course, cater to different audiences and their motivations are slightly different. But I have training in journalism. So I am first and foremost a journalist. I have covered scientific, social, and environmental issues for a variety of publications from the Washington Post to the Guardian. And I've also reported at different Olympic Games, whether it's the London Olympics in 2012, Sochi 2014, and worked in the data sphere for the Rio 2016 Paralympics. And that translates and transfers into my storytelling penchant. Whenever I write a story, if it's a fictional story, if it's a poem, there is some truth to that. And I try to do all the truth searching through my journalistic toolkit. So I will be reporting on a story and then somehow finding a way to translate that into fiction.
Wow. Basically, your stories are fiction and then you bring in your real life experiences into these stories in some way.
Yes. I would say that so far that has been the method that I followed. My debut novel, Glass Bottom, came out in 2024, July. And it was written after nearly a decade's worth of reporting on the ground on climatological issues. So far it has been the way I work. I try to go there and report and do long form reporting. So not short stints, but longer stints year after year. Or maybe just read a lot on a subject and then go report on the ground to understand different perspectives. It's a way of documenting testimony, right? First collect the truth of people that will be composite characters in your story. But there is some sense of ethical solace that I get when I do it as a journalist. There is a sense of moral responsibility because I try to write about sensitive issues and I want to be honest and responsible about it. I want to be brave enough to do a good job, and I think journalism lets me do that because I'm working off certain testimony from my journalism background.
So you mentioned about climate change. So when did you start working on the climate change topic and what has been your experience so far?
I wish I could tell you like a clear date, but just like the condition of climate change as such, there is no clear beginning or end for me. I have always been someone who has a very visceral connection to the earth, nature. I'm a very sensitive person. I try to look at it as a powerful tool instead of a vulnerability. This is how it came about to me. So I started writing about climate in a way that was very natural to me. I remember in my master's degree in Colombia, and even in classes that did not cater to environment directly, the angle that I would take or the story that I would choose to tell would be about climate or the environment. So it was a very natural instinct for me. It was not planned or it did not cater to a certain hype in the world. It was just what I wanted to do and just what felt compelling to me at a time when it may not have been the most pertinent issue in the news world.
So when you write about climate change in your stories, do you interact with people on the ground or do you work with organizations which are responsible for generating the toxic gases? What is your mode of operandi?
I think it's both, right? As a journalist, we need to be both horizontal and vertical in our approach. Of course, the first priority is to go to the front lines, to the ground and report from the field, from the communities that are being, the most vulnerable communities that are suffering at the minute and who don't necessarily get a voice when it comes to issues that are being discussed in the news outlets, in the media and headlines. So that's there, but we also have to do broad reporting on bigger issues. So for instance, I was part of an investigative team that looked at a dirty fossil fuel plant and we had to do the financial investigation, the field reporting. We also had to take the reporting back to people who would be responsible for financing or for supporting this kind of projects, and they had to give their side of story if they were willing to do so. So we have to deal with perpetrators, with communities, non-profits, anybody and everybody who's involved in a particular issue.
So once you reported, have there been instances of people or organizations trying to cut down on the emissions, or is there any good that came out of your work?
I think that's a very difficult question to answer as someone who's a storyteller and journalist, because we don't see immediate impact. It's a continuous effort. You're working in a lineage of reporters. You're working as a part of a community that's trying to report on a particular issue. We have to just do our bit and do it responsibly. Yes, there has been positive feedback to a lot of stories. A lot of stories have given back to me personally, built a lot of community friendships across my different issues I've covered. But there is no direct KPI that you can measure of a story. A story lingers. It works in a very different time dimension. It lingers beyond you. It is current as well as timeless, and your job is to do it right. And yes, somewhere it'll touch someone or it'll move a needle. And if it happens within your existence, that's great. But your job is to document what is happening. It's a moral responsibility. You don't think of impact that's almost like impulsively, all of a sudden that happens after the story. It takes its own time.
Right. So let me put it this way. What is the most satisfying aspect of your work?
I was actually thinking about this in the morning. I've been blessed in this lifetime that I'm a writer and poet. I don't think there's any other career apart from maybe being a musician that would have done justice to my existence in this world today. I get to live stories, I get to tell stories, I get to read stories, and that is my life. I think that's the most satisfying achievement of my life, that I get to live this, I get to be this, I get to interrogate myself through this medium. You get to be a little more honest, a lot braver because you're doing this work. You realize it's a gift that it can be taken away at any minute, and you do it with a sense of holiness. It's a very humbling feeling to know that you've been endowed with a certain gift and that it's your job to exercise it in the world.
Interesting. So I guess it aligns pretty much with your value systems that you had from your childhood, probably, which built as a person as you are right now. Tell us about your value systems, if you can go a bit deeper into that and see how it links to the work that you're doing.
Before I answer that, I also want to say I think all of us are blessed. We just need to figure out what the blessing is. That is the most difficult part. I think the late Jane Goodall said that you're here for a reason. You have to find it and then do your bit, right? So I just have had this sense that, okay, this is what I was given. This is the toolkit that I was given to live with and to exercise in this world. I'm the daughter of two very responsible, intellectual, poetic parents. My mother's very practical. My father is a poet in the house. He reads along with me. So I've grown up learning from them. But I also believe that a value system evolves with time, right? It goes through a lot of obstacles, hurdles. You keep questioning yourself. It's not something that you're just inheriting. When you go to the West and you study journalism in the United States and you come to India, you understand that the ethical concerns are not the same and your value systems are questioned, and you evolve after you report on the ground and you realize that, it cannot be a copy paste. So I think it is something that you evolve with, something that you learn from experience, something that you learn from reading, consuming art, questioning art. It's all about being open in the world, about being able to debate your own thought processes and just be willing to learn and think, which is something that we'll all have to do more actively now. I think it's going to be an endangered skill to think every day, to think creatively and critically, and to question our own selves, our own judgments. I think it's a value system that evolves, that actually respond to the world and its complexities today.
Yeah, we are getting less and less opportunity to think deeply these days because we have too much information at hand from various sources. So it's getting difficult to find time to sit down and think at the first place. Great. Tell us about your TED experience and what does it mean to be a TED fellow?
Yeah, before that, Venkat, I just want to say I don't think it is getting difficult for us to think or that we have access to too much information, and that's a negative. I think that's a positive, right? We've always had the libraries around us. We always have had access to knowledge. It's just at a different speed and different scale. I think it's our own compulsion to kind of think of critical thought as disposable, as something that we can do without, something that can be replaced with some other skill set. And I highly disagree. I'm very concerned about it. I think we need to keep pushing our own thought processes. We need to be able to work with the systems today with a much sharper and critical viewpoint. I don't think we can just let it go completely. We have to evolve to work with technology, not succumb to it. So I think it's a choice. We are making a very critical choice now as a community, and we will see that as the years to come as to what the repercussions would be. Regarding TED, so yes, I think it was during COVID that I got selected as a TED Fellow. That too was a blessing for me because during the pandemic, it was quite a solitary experience. But I just come back from MIT, from my night science fellowship. I had to leave all of a sudden because of the borders closing. And I just wanted to belong to a cohort. I wanted that sense of kinship, that sense of cultural, mythological kinship. And the TED Fellow program gave that to me. I was part of a cohort. We could reach out to each other if we wanted to. And even if there was no direct communication happening, there was this overwhelming sense of belonging to a program, of working towards something, of perhaps meeting someday. And I think that's what the TED Fellowship did for me. It kept me afloat when things were getting really hard. And it's been a journey of a lifetime. I've met some crazy people, like really talented people across careers, whether they're astrophysicists or fashion designers, musicians, writers, poets, entrepreneurs. They always teach me something I may not be receiving from my direct field of work. So it's great to meet them at different events and conferences and learn. And at the same time, I learn resistance from them, right? They're not someone who follow blindly. They resist both internally and externally. They're very strong vocal force for the TED network, and I really appreciate that of the fellows.
Interesting. So you said that you are a poet also, right? So what is your style of poetry?
I wish I could tell you that I have a style. I think poetry does not come with all these categories and these semantics as such. Of course, you can study poetry and go through all the technicalities of the art form. But for me, poetry is very visceral. I think it comes to me when everything else fails, or when a certain situation in a story or in my life merits the form of poetry, where prose fails, where the essay fails, where dialogue fails, where everything else fails, poetry comes in. It is one of the most cryptic but long-lasting forms of communication that we have. I pledge my allegiance to it. I think I read a poem a day when I was writing my novel Glass Bottom. I've learned more from the poets and painters than from the novelists. And I think that's because it's very distilled. All the feelings are kind of compressed in every line. And I love that. I love everything about the rhythm, the detail, the imagery in a poem. And I just go wherever the form takes me in a particular moment.
What is the difference you think between a prose and a poem these days? Because the line is kind of diminishing. I mean, there's a lot of verse. I'm not able to distinguish between what really is a prose and what is a poem these days. Because, you just fold the lines and then call them as poems. So how do you tell a poem apart from a prose?
I think you just answered the question. If you read Glass Bottom, you will have the same feeling, that there will be times when you can't tell if is it a verse poem, is it a prose piece. When you fold the lines, it becomes poetry. Whatever's outside folds into the inside. It also works with the concept of a mirror image. So when you're looking at rupture on a colossal scale, whether it's ecological, social, one way you could do it is you could look directly at the rupture, and that may be overwhelming. It may be too big to describe. And the other way to do it is to look at its mirror image. And I do that through the body, through the female body. That itself is poetic. It doesn't need a separate poem to make it a poetic book, but there is a poem in the interlude, and I hope you get to read it sometimes. Yeah, I think it's where you fold the spaces, it becomes poetry. I think it's more about the motivation of the writer as to what form they would want to call it, what vessel they would want to call it. For me, everything is fluid. I've read some of the most poetic verses in a novel or in a very dense prose paper. So I don't see the line being an issue.
So you mentioned that when you fall short of words, when you are not able to do a prose, when you are not able to write it in text, then you turn to poetry. So that's what I'm trying to understand. So when you are able to write the line as a poetry, when you are folding the lines, why can't just have it as a prose? Why should it be a poem?
I don't think it's that it's not like that I try to write prose and it fails, so I do poetry. Sometimes it's just what the character demands or what the situation demands. And you know that if you started writing it as a novel piece or as a paragraph, it just wouldn't match what you're feeling inside. We all live lives in different phases. Not every day of our life is a poem. Not every day of our life is a paragraph. There's some days when you can look at a mountain and feel poetic, and there's some days when you go through normal life and it can be a beautiful paragraph or the beginning of a novel. I think it's just something that internally tells you that this is a poem, and then this is a paragraph, and this is an essay. So you, as a writer, develop that internal compass that tells you what is needed for a particular time and place in your work. And I think over the years, I'm trying to listen to that compass more and more. But poetry is my first love, and it'll always be, because it has taught me the most out of all the art forms.
Got it. So I've heard the same thing from somebody else too when they released a book, which is actually a mix of prose and poetry. It's a free flow form where they had written paragraphs and suddenly they would turn to poetry as they feel. As there are times in which you want to write a paragraph and there are times when you want to write a poem. Who are your favorite poets?
I think the one poet that has influenced me the most in the past years has been T.S. Eliot. There's a very beautiful line in his work, Four Quartets, where he is speaking in a certain context, but I remember those lines, which goes like, "You are not here to verify, instruct yourself, or inform curiosity or carry report. You are here to kneel where prayer has been valid." And this is my approach to work, right? So when you are writing something in the fictional space, whether it's a short story, a poem, or a novel, I do it with this sense of kneeling at an altar, and I don't have a very overt intent to why I'm writing a novel or why a story comes to me. So definitely T.S. Eliot, he's one of the North Stars. His work is one of the North Stars that I relate to. Then there's Anne Carson, beautiful. Again, genre shifting, doesn't really believe in genres. She does what is needed for the stories, whether it's her essays, whether it's short talks or autobiography of Red and the Red Dog. Jodie Graham, beautiful poet. And the list can go on and on. Paradise Lost, the ultimate poem by Milton. And to think of the fact that he wrote that when he was blind, it just baffles me. So yeah, there are a lot of poets. Aga Shahid Ali, another. Clarice Lispector, she doesn't write poetry, but she writes beautiful poetic prose. There's Lisa Robertson, Primo Levi, Roland Barthes, and of course Toni Morrison, who is someone I look up to almost every day. She is a Nobel-winning author. I read her book Beloved like the Bible every day while I was writing my novel. One of the best nature writers we've ever had.
Sometimes when I read Mary Oliver, I found that I could really feel the scene when I read her words, right? So quite beautiful. I really enjoy reading those. So have you been through Mary Oliver's work?
Yes, of course. I have been through Mary Oliver's work, and I remember when I got COVID the first time, because I've got it multiple times, isolating in a room, but there was a glass window, and my father sat outside the window and read Wild Geese by Mary Oliver while I was inside.
Cool. All right. We spoke a lot about your work, your poetry, your TED. Let's talk about some of your hobbies and interests apart from whatever you have mentioned so far.
Venkat, if I could add a few things, I think this is something that I just want to share with you and your audience. Poetry also works because I love the concept of opacity and its relation to understanding. Right? When you're reading a poem, you don't necessarily get every line, every phrase, every word, every intent of the poet. But there is a level of care and compassion that you grow towards the poem. Like, you don't have to understand the full thing, and that's the beauty of poetry. And I love that because that teaches you to love without the aspiration of full understanding, which is something that's missing in our community today, in our world today. We expect full understanding of ourselves, of the people around us. And when that fails, there's a crisis. But poetry teaches you that you can operate with care and compassion, even without full understanding, that there is a very potent quality of opacity that we have to exercise as writers. And I think that's beautiful. And, if you read a poem every day, you will learn that lesson very easily. You will not understand everything, every poem, every line, every word, every phrase, but you'll understand that there is beauty in that you can love the work without trying to reach it in its fullness, per se. Yeah.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. Tell us about your hobbies and interests.
My hobbies and interests are quite malleable. They change with time. Of course, as a writer, I read I try to read a lot. We have a book club, writers reading book club, published and aspiring writers. We get together, discuss a book through the very technical lens of craft, narrative, etc. But also, how do you construct a particular emotion, or how do you elicit a particular emotion from your characters? But apart from reading, I like sport. I'm not an athlete by any means, but I used to play tennis in college, and recently I have started playing more games. I like going out. I like feeling the strength in my body. So that's one thing. I also this year made a conscious effort to do more tactile activities with my hands. So whether it's making something or trying pottery or making a bookmark, just something that requires you to use your hands is always very appealing to me. I try listening and understanding classical music, but of course I fail at that because I'm not trained in the technicalities of music, but I enjoy a great classical performance just because it's so cryptic. I don't understand how Beethoven or Bach created those melodies, created those tracks, and I'm puzzled by that. How do you do that? And it baffles me, but it pulls me back to itself again and again. Just some of the things I'm trying, but as I say, my list can go on and on. I have a huge list of aspirational activities, like the things that I want to do or try at least in this lifetime.
Can you mention some of the things that you have in your list that you have not done so far?
I want to make a kite. A kite making activity would be great. I want to do the simple kites, but those 3 dimensions that happen at the big festivals, I want to just try doing that and see how it goes. I used to be someone with great handwriting in school. I remember getting a load of certificates for that. But as the computers come into our lives, we generally type before we write on paper. Do I take notes by hand? So I do want to go back to a handwriting class and just improve my notes. For the feel of working with a pen and paper again, I want to do that. It would be great if I could do a longer pottery workshop, because there's something about working with clay, an earth material that grounds you. It's almost like an earthing wire. You come out of it very calm and humble. So that is something on my list as well. It's going to be a whole podcast if I start listing everything, but these are some of the top activities that I want to try next year.
So let's talk about the societal issues that you care about. Top things that come to your mind which you have not already covered, like climate change. Is there anything else?
There is definitely something else that is on my mind, and I'm currently working on it. What will hopefully be the second book. So it's too early and premature to talk about it because I'm still learning, and it would be very irresponsible for me to talk about it without getting a full understanding of the issue. Topics that I have not covered but I'm interested in. I think anything that plagues the human condition is interesting to me. Anything that teaches me about ethical and moral elasticity is something that I'm interested in. The bigger questions of if you look at where we are in the world, we have such morally complex situations where you have such wrong that has existed in the past that begets more wrong today. And I'm always curious with the big questions of what does it mean to be a bystander, a witness? Is there such a thing as an amoral bystander? How do you live and exist in this world without being part of the wrong running the world, which is our structures, our systems, our institutions? I love to read great science stories, wildlife, marine life, anything that teaches me something about the other beings and the other intelligence that exists on this planet. Yes, I'm open to anything. I think that is why I very openly say, I think a lot of people who know me know this, and they always say, how is it that so easy for you to distill, to zero in on a year as one of the best in your life so far? And for me, it was 2019 when I was at MIT as a night science fellow. It was the best time I've had in a long time. And it's because I was able to just spend 9 months talking to microbiologists, talking to physicists, talking to linguistic professors, talking to architecture professors, anyone trying to push the boundary, failing at innovation, but still going at it, speaks to me. And I can sit in any class under the sun as long as I can engage in the subject at hand. If it's a class on game theory, I'll be there. I want to be there. If there is a class on paleontology, I want to be there. I want to go find a fossil with you or learn about a fossil with you. I don't think there's any topic that I don't want to learn about. I think that's how we become writers, right? Where all of our passions and persuasions kind of mix and blend and you create this own vocabulary of your own. You can only do that when you when you're curious about life in general.
Of course. Thank you so much for sharing your views on so many things. We are coming towards the end of the podcast. Do you have any questions about the podcast or myself?
No, thank you, Venkat. You've been really kind with me. Thank you for reaching out after the Green Literature Festival. It's always a pleasure and honor to discuss about work and writing in general. I don't have any questions, but I would just want to pay homage to the writers who've come before us and to lend a hand of solidarity to those who are creating art today in times that are risky, where the social conditions and the inevitable doubt that comes in with the creation process seems insurmountable. But we just have to keep on going. But this is because this is vital to our times and this is vital to the craft. And I hope that more people listen to your podcast, listen to the extraordinary individuals you've interviewed in the past, and join the movement in some way or the other, either as a consumer, creator, patron, in any form. Please support the arts because they're not exclusive. They're part of everything we do, the sciences, the politics, the philosophy, everything.
Right. Wonderful. And thank you so much for spending time in the podcast and talking to us. I wish you all the best in your life and whatever you aspire to do. Please take care and bye for now.
Thank you, Venkat. Happy New Year. Bye.
Bye.
That was a great podcast with Sonali Prasad. Please subscribe to this channel and follow it for more awesome podcasts. Opinions expressed by the guests in this podcast are their own. The host or the sponsors of the podcast do not condone the opinions expressed by the guests or the actions arising out of those opinions. Any decisions or actions that the listeners might take as a result of listening to this podcast must be based on their own judgment and will be at their own risk. The podcast host or their sponsors will not be held responsible for the consequences of any actions and or decisions taken as a result of any content in this podcast.